Hey everybody, we're gonna let this go live on Facebook and make sure everybody's in our Zoom room before we get started. So just bear with us for just a few moments, and that way we don't have to reiterate our introduction multiple times. Okay. All right, hey everybody, this is Jeff Martin with Magic City Books. So thrilled to have you here for our virtual author series. We've been doing these a bunch, since April, 2 or 3 a week, and it's been a really great way to stay connected with all of you. And I just want to say thanks for sticking with us. I know it's been a weird year, and I'm feeling pretty good about 2021. I think we're gonna have a really nice summer and fall. I think we're still going to be doing this into the winter and spring though. So I hope you'll stick with us on these virtual events. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming up. You can go to our website, Magic City Books, and see our full schedule. We have one I'm really excited about though on November 30th coming up. We're going to be doing a conversation with Ta-Nehisi Coates and Damon Lindelof, the creator of Watchmen and Lost. And Damon Lindelof used a piece that Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote for The Atlantic called The Case for Reparations, which is where Damon Lindelof first heard about the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921, which is why he decided to set the show in Tulsa, Watchmen, and why it was kind of the inciting event around the whole show. And they've never done a public discussion before, so they're going to do that on November 30th. Should be really, really cool. So that's coming up. And then on Monday, this coming Monday, on the 23rd, we're going to be doing a discussion about water pollution with Erin Brockovich. So that should be pretty interesting. She actually just wrote a big piece in the Times today about the new transition and some of the changes at the EPA and a lot of other things going on. So that should be pretty interesting discussion. So stick with us, see what's going on, and we will see you very soon at some of those. But I'm really excited about tonight. If you guys have not had a chance yet to see the Call Me Ishmael phone book, it's really one of my favorite projects of the year, and not just because we're included in it. That's not the only reason, but I've always been such a nerd about what I call books on books. There actually used to be some sections in bookstores when I would visit bookstores. I don't see it too much now, but it would be literally called books on books. And sometimes they'd be like literary arts or whatever, but I like books on books because I just love reading, stuff that's in my wheelhouse. And I also just love resources. I was telling someone actually yesterday, it might've been on one of our more recent events. There was a book that I read in the early 2000s that became kind of like my Bible for learning about new writers. And it was a book that the website salon.com put out, big kind of thick compendium about contemporary fiction and writers. And it was basically it was almost like a book Wikipedia before Wikipedia came out, just like who these people were, what their best works were. Everybody from like Don DeLillo and David Foster Wallace, all these people. And so I would use that to kind of keep by my bedside table and look for new reads. If I didn't know what I was going to read next, I'd use it as a resource. And this kind of touches the same space for me that does. I'm going to be always dipping back into this. And it's hard to describe what this actually is. So luckily I don't have to do that because we have Stephanie Kent and Logan Smalley here, the two masterminds behind the Calling Ishmael project. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to give you a sense of what this book is, how you can use it to become a more engaged reader and all kinds of different stuff. So I want to say a big welcome and thank you to Steph and Logan for joining us. Hey guys.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you for a great introduction. And if our office that we're in right now wasn't such a mess, I would swivel the camera so you could see the humongous pile of books on books that we use to research this. So that's a great reference point.
Also, I just want to say it's pretty cool to be a warm-up act for Ta-Nehisi Coates, Damon Lindelof, and Erin Brock.
Absolutely.
That'd be very cool. Yeah, we've had
warm-ups.
We'll go on that tour.
Your call.
We did an event like a couple weeks ago with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson together, and
how was it?
It was wild. But the person we had right before that, kind of said the same thing. It's been a wild summer. It's been really interesting in the fall. So thank you guys for being here. I guess I would like to begin by, I think one of the things that might be hardest for people to understand is what the project was that led to the book. The book did not come out of a vacuum. There was kind of a larger project that led to this. Obviously, the book is named after the Daniel Quinn book Ishmael. No, not really. It's obviously a Moby Dick reference. But can you kind of just tell us from the kind of 50,000-foot level how this all got started?
Absolutely. So we both live in New York City, and we moved here around the same time. We're new friends, sort of exploring the neighborhoods that we lived in. And one night we were having beers in the West Village at this kind of literary bar. It has this history of being a place that a lot of famous poets and writers used to hang out. It's called the White Horse Tavern. And we were sitting there talking about our favorite first sentences of books. And, you know, there are some famous ones. The best of times was the worst of times.
Screaming came across the sky. That's my favorite.
Good one.
And attention, of course.
Yeah. So we came upon in our conversation one of the most famous first sentences of a book, which is "Call Me Ishmael," which is the opening line of Moby Dick, of course. And whether it was the environment of this literary bar or a couple beers in, we just sort of started goofing around and talking about what if "Call Me Ishmael" was like kind of a pun, and instead of introducing yourself as Ishmael, it was more like, hey, call me Ishmael. And we're both just sort of media idea people, and 24 hours later we had kept the brainstorm going and set up a voicemail box that anybody could call and leave a message about a book that they love. So we sent that around to some people that we knew who are great readers and asked them to just talk about a book that was important to them. And the calls were really amazing. So we shared them online. And pretty soon after that, we started getting calls from people that we didn't know. And then we started getting more calls from people that we didn't know. And now 5 years later, we've gotten thousands of these calls, and they're really incredible. We check the voicemail box every day, and it's absolutely the best 10 to 30 minutes of my day. Just these calls are amazing. They're about every type of book you can imagine.
Yeah, we got a hilarious call about Cat in the Hat today.
Yeah.
Where someone's really upset about how sinister the cat is.
Yeah, so calls about kids' books, calls about contemporary novels, calls about classic literature. And they really run the gambit from being, you know, an passion defense of why more people should read this book to a personal story about what was going on in their life when they read it. And the calls are really beautiful. So we've been sharing them online for years, and this October.
I think we should be like super clear. So the one sentence, that was a great, that's our origin story, but it's like, we have a phone number where people can call and tell stories about books that they love, period. And so someone's calling Ishmael right now. Thousands of people have called Ishmael. And I just want to make sure we.
Yeah, you got
it. What's it like to, you know, when you have something that's an idea, right? It starts off as an idea. You don't know if it's going to get any traction. You have no sense of whether it's going to work in the long run or not. Did it take off pretty quickly, or did it take a while to get some traction?
Well, I think Steph was alluding to it. The very first thing we did was put our best friends on the case, right? Like our favorite readers in our lives. And immediately the stories that they gave us were so much better than we thought they were going to be. And it's not like we had low expectations. We have some really, you know, we love our friends, and they're thoughtful people and really good readers. And, you know, it's just an interesting question. The prompt specifically was call about a book you love as it relates to a story you lived. So it wasn't just tell us about this book. It was tell us how this book informed your life, or how your life informed the reading of this book. So you started getting all sorts of different avenues into titles that you either were already familiar with or weren't familiar with, but viewed as a set. And especially as it started to spread, and one story inspired 10 more people to call, and one, you know, et cetera, you started to see this really kind of beautiful chorus of human stories and human emotions emerging from the really quirky collection of voicemails.
And just to go back to your original question, I think, you know, we started the project just as like, hey, this is sort of a weird idea. Like, it never, you know, that first night, and even probably the first year of the project, it was always just, hey, this is kind of fun to play around with. There was no pressure on it. It wasn't like, God, we have to get these videos to go viral. Like, it always just felt like this sort of quiet project that reached the people it needed to reach. And everything beyond that has just been really, really wonderful to watch.
One way to put a like punctuation point on it is, like 6 months after we launched it, we were on we found ourselves on WNYC's Brian Lair show, right? Which like, if you're from around here and also not from around here, you know, it's like this epic call-in show that's like, it would be the dream show for a project like this. And suddenly like Brian Lair's telling everyone to call Ishmael, and we're like, what just happened? You know?
When that happens, are you, do you have help answering these? Are you, it's just the two of you listening
Straight
to
to
them?
voicemail. Safest call you'll ever make. It goes straight to voicemail. Well, actually now there's more options than voicemail now, which of course, you know, our phone book created.
We do. It takes a little longer to go through them, but thankfully we don't need like all hands on deck answering the phone all the time. But we did have one incident where John Green shared one of the calls about his book, which was wonderful. And John Green fans about broke our voicemail box. Like we got so many calls.
The cult of John Green.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when you were kind of in those early periods and you were listening to all these messages and kind of, I don't know how you were compiling it. Probably, I don't even know if you were really compiling it in any real way, but did you start seeing patterns emerge early? Were there books that you started to say, hey, we're getting multiple calls about X, Y, and Z? These obviously are books that are, reaching across different spectrums. Did you see a huge variety, or were there things that kind of kept popping up over and over again?
I think both. I mean, there's definite trends, more in like types of literature than specific authors. I mean, the well-known classics and really popular contemporary ones we get a lot of calls about. But if I had to say the top 3 categories that we get the most calls about are books that people remember reading in their childhood, like a book that was like their first experience with like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Books are incredible. The book that they read like in high school or for school that they didn't want to read, but were forced to read and then ended up really loving. And then I would say the third biggest category is like books that people reread. We get a lot of calls about books that people revisit year after year, or
like a comfort, kind of a comfort book for them. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Or even ones that they hated the first time and then tried again and really liked.
Yeah, we do. We also do prompts with people. So sometimes we'll just do informal collaborations with like people we like, whether it's a writer or maybe like a science YouTuber or whatever that, I say science YouTuber specifically. This guy called Joe Hansen, his channel's called It's Okay to Be Smart. We partnered with him and he asked his crowd to call about books that changed people's perspective on the natural world. That's actually one of my favorite collections that we have. Is we got all these wonderful calls about nonfiction science books, physics and Neil deGrasse Tyson's
but also
books.
Science fiction.
Yeah, science fiction, and those like, to relate that to your questions. I don't think people necessarily think to call Ishmael about that, but with a nice prompt, people do, and the stories are just as good, and also really enjoyable because they're different.
Yeah. I wonder, before we talk about the book, I'm curious, well, one, is there a time limit on the message they can give? Does it cut them off at a certain point?
So I think it does cut you off we had a system where it was like 2 minutes, but our new one is 5 minutes. Okay. And if you call back, it gives you a nudge that if you get cut off, you can just call back and we'll.
Okay. I was wondering if you get a lot of like people like halfway through their story, just beep, that just cuts them off halfway.
Well, we did, and it's actually common. It happens all the time. And we say on our website that if you call, we'll do a light edit to, take out any ums, or if you say you make a mistake, just tell us and we'll edit it out for you. But I did get this one call about the Da Vinci Code, and this guy was so nervous that he just kind of kept starting over. I think he called back like 5 times before, and it ended up being a really lovely call, but Da Vinci Code was a hard one.
You mentioned Brian Lehrer. For those who are watching, Brian Lehrer is, the go-to public radio show in New York. And it's kind of like the Terry Gross of New York or something like that, I guess would be some way you could describe it, but definitely an institution. I wonder, the thing this project really reminds me of a lot is I love the StoryCorps project on NPR and sure. The way it's very participatory like this. And I wonder if you've had any interest or have thought about, using all these in a way that would be outreach to like a public radio station as an actual show of some kind.
Yeah, we would absolutely love to do that. We got a really nice note from Dave Isay, who's the founder of StoryCorps, about this. both on our project, and then he tracked it to when we launched these Call Me Ishmael phones, which we should probably explain our backdrop at some point. But we love StoryCorps, and I've been very fortunate to have a couple of cool conversations with him and get some advice. But yeah, we would love to turn this. I think that it is a perfect body of content to talk about in terms of spinning into a more formal show, be it a podcast or an animation or we even if there are any Modern Love fans out there, we're pretty convinced that we could actually take the Modern Love story structure and apply it to books in a creative way. We're both media makers in our day jobs too, so we're keen to explore all of this.
Before, Garrison Keillor, before he got canceled or Me Too'd or whatever happened to Garrison Keillor, he would always do the Writer's Almanac in the morning. It was like this module 5-minute thing. And it was always good, it was the one place you could kind of introduce new poetry to the United States, other than like the New Yorker. There's just so few venues in the mass communications world for people to be exposed to poetry. And that went away, of course, when he went away. And so there's definitely, I think, an open lane for something like this. Why don't you tell us about the phones, and then we'll talk about the book. But yeah, tell us about the phones and the backdrop and what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so this wall behind me is a row of Call Me Ishmael phones. And, essentially as soon as we started the project, like I said, was an online piece that anybody could participate in by calling the number, and we would share them online as videos. We always sort of knew a couple things about the project. One was that we wanted to make it a book because we love books. And the second was that we kind of wanted to see how we could make it a physical project. Like, our videos are so fun to make, and we found this great community of book lovers on YouTube that really loved them. But it's kind of a project that like demands to be off screen, and especially now where we're all just like staring at our phones and computers more than ever. I think it resonates too, but the project just feels so human. Like, hearing somebody's voice is a really intimate, personal thing. And so we wanted to figure out a way to share them that didn't require staring at a video on a device. And so we had this idea, as we do with Call Me Ishmael, that we could make a listening device. So essentially, we take these guys, which are replica vintage rotary phones, and we actually hacked them. So we open them up and rewire them, and basically make it so that they're listening devices. And we rent these out to bookstores, libraries, schools, museums, some
coffee shops,
literary festivals. They've been in some fun places, and essentially any venue that has them can curate a little playlist so that anybody who picks up the receiver and pushes one of the buttons hears one of the Call Me Ishmael stories.
Yeah, so they're actually synced up to the numbers in our phone book, which we can show you. But basically, there's 9,999 4-digit possibilities because we deal in 4 digits, and each one links to a different story about a different book. And these phones can also host sort of curated audio from the community. So for example, if it were at a library, they will source stories from local readers about books that they love. Or maybe they have a visiting author, right? Maybe Ta-Nehisi Coates is coming to town. They would do a story about, that collect, they might prompt the community, what impact has Ta-Nehisi Coates books had on you and here in Oklahoma, and right, like you would imagine a lot of amazing calls from that, and you could feature that. It's a little hard to imagine in a pandemic. That's why they're on the wall at the moment. But
I was going to ask that a question. How do you see that being utilized in the world we're living in right now?
Right now, it's kind of on pause, sadly. I mean, not sadly, because obviously it's a small price to pay to keep everybody healthy and safe, but maybe they'll have some hand wipes next to them when we start rolling them back out.
I'm pretty stoked at exploring them as like kids devices, like enchanted objects, because I don't have kids, but my brother has two kids, almost 3 kids soon, like maybe next. And when they're super young, you don't want them on screens, but being able to value reading and stuff like that, both with books and then being able to listen to books and all this stuff, I think that could make pretty neat, if a kid sees a button, they want to push it. If a parent
for sure.
sees a rotary phone, they want to be nostalgic. And
I think the analog nature of the project is kind of in some ways the most romantic element of the whole enterprise, and I think that leads to the idea of a physical book. Why don't you guys have a great little presentation that would kind of, I think, illustrate for people what the book is, because it's one thing for me to hold this up, but let's give them a little sense of what the guts of this thing are.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I am gonna just quickly hold it up so when I show you these things, you see that what I'm showing is a very small sample of kind of 200 pages of fun yellow book nostalgia.
And we should say the book kind of has an alphabetical setup that goes through every state in the country.
Yeah.
Of course, and we'll get to us in a little bit, but yeah, here we go.
Yep, full screen.
Here's the phone number for everybody. Write down and get call when we're done.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to call Ishmael, that's the phone number. Leave us a message about a book you love. I'm going to skip through that one, but here's the front. We're pretty proud that the front cover is interactive. It is an interactive guide to life-changing books. So you could call that number that I just showed you, or that you can see under the little phone right there. And those short extensions under Pride and Prejudice, The House on Mango Street, and The Sneetches, those are all functioning. So, give it a ring if you're going to get a taste of what's in the book.
How did you guys end up deciding on what 3 to put on the cover? Was that a arduous decision? Did you have arguments and discussions about that? Or was it like, just pick any 3 you want?
It's hard. I mean, we switched it out a lot, but I think those ended up being 3 that are like there's something for everybody. Like either someone likes a classic or something you read in school or a children's book. So it felt like a good array.
Yeah, they're really good. All right, so here's what one of those spreads looks like. And I'm going to take you through just like kind of the 4 or 5 key elements of the Call Me Ishmael phone book, which takes its inspiration obviously from the phone books of old, the yellow pages. So the first thing you'll notice is these categories. So, Jeff, in answer to one of your questions about, what do people call about? I don't think they have these categories in mind, but these categories are sort of emerging groupings of all the thousands of calls we've received and organized in a unique way. So adventures, and then again, you call that number at the bottom, and then you dial one of these short codes and you'll hear the story. So you can find them organized by category, but we also in each category took the time to put together kind of like a little puzzle. Steph, maybe you want to explain this one just so I'm not talking the whole time?
Yeah, so when we, came across this idea to create Call Me Ishmael into a book and style it like a phone book that was interactive and would allow people to not only read our stories, but hear them themselves, we tracked down a bunch of telephone directories, which are very hard to get your hands on, I have to say. We have probably the biggest collection of them on the island of Manhattan. But we started reading these phone books and just looking for other ideas, fun ways that we could sort of put a literary twist on what used to be in the yellow pages. And of course, you can't open a phone book without being barraged with ads. So we had this idea to make literary adverts. So this one you're seeing with a ship right now is one of them. So like all of the 4-digit codes in the book, this one leads to one of the calls that we've gotten from an anonymous bibliophile about a book that they love. But this is a little different because it's not telling you ahead of time, or at least it's not telling you overtly what you're going to hear about. So there's a couple of clues. So as you can see, this one is Epic Outfitters. So it's like a, Outfitters, a store for that has something to do with a ship. So that image is one of the clues. Then there's another clue in the name of this fictional company. And there's this little tagline, handwoven apparel for the journey ahead. There's another clue in there somewhere. And then for the contact information in this pretend advert, it says ask for Penelope with the number. So Jeff, I don't know if you've already heard this one. We'll put you on the spot. Do you know what book that could be referring to?
I'm stumped. Go for it.
All right. Well, if you call that number, you will hear a call about the Odyssey. Penelope is the name of
Epic.
Yeah.
Epic.
Yeah.
So just to follow through on that, right? So this is the next page. You would write the Tralfamadorian therapy and advice will change your worldview. Book anytime with Billy. Right, like That's right, Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. And so we got a great call where someone sort of categorizes this book or tells a story about how this book served as a wonderful piece of advice, in book form in their life. So tons and tons of clues, and just as readers have been discovering this book, people have told us they really enjoyed sort of going through and kind of trying to make a guess and then figure it out. It's quite fun that way. But I want to take you through the other elements. There is a reading experience. These are transcripts of the calls. Of course, you can still call and hear them, but some of them are quite beautiful, especially this one, I think. And so, there is a reading experience in the phone book. Another cool thing, and Jeff, you mentioned this earlier, is we actually dedicated a section to each of the 50 states. And you'll notice a few cool things. Oh, I skipped this one here. I'll tell you about the 50 states in a second, but Steph, you want to talk about the literary landmarks?
Yeah, so again, kind of playing off of the phone book, we wanted to feature different bookish places. So we found a couple of pieces of literary tourism in every single state. So this one or two literary places in Alabama that you can visit. I was trying to remember, Jeff, do you remember what the Oklahoma ones were? I think it's the Outsiders Museum is one. You're on mute.
Oh, we have the home here that's a museum now where the Outsiders film adaptation was done, and that's the one in the book. And I think, let's see, the other one is there's an antique store. Oh, there's also a cabin museum, the Sequoia Cabin Museum as well, which is in Sallisaw, Oklahoma.
Did we miss any? Should there have been a better literary place from Oklahoma in there?
The only thing I think is, Ralph Ellison's birthplace. It was kind of a cool one. So, you know what? That's for volume 2, though.
There we go.
You got it.
Hey, phone books are annual.
That's right. There you go.
So obviously we love independent bookstores. This is an interactive book. So we did our best to find a bunch of independent bookstores and feature them alongside each state. And then Steph did an absolutely amazing project where you see that interviews with state name bookstores. Steph conducted an interview with the bookstore owner or bookseller in every single state. And I just want to say it's a really cool set because over time we plan to make this a living book and swap them in and out and stuff like that. But all of the interviews that Steph conducted were after the pandemic, but before the book publishing in October. So it's this really unique sweeping set of interviews and perspective from all 50 states at a really unique time in human history, right? And so it's actually quite a positive story if anyone's curious to hear the collective, perspective of all the bookstores. Obviously, it's a tough time, and everyone should be shopping indie till their, wallets fall off. But at the same time, it's a really amazing moment for everyone to band together.
Totally. Yeah. And most importantly, how Jeff and I first came to be friends. I sent him
That's
an
right.
email out of the blue, explaining this crazy project. Didn't even have the book already done yet. And Jeff, you so kindly offered, and we had rather a long conversation, if I remember.
That's right.
Yeah, what's cool is, I will say, having listened to a bunch of them since the book came out, I was amazed at how optimistic everybody still is. It's been such a tough time. I think one of the things that seems to come through is the passion, of course, which I'm not surprised by, the passion these people have for what they do. And it'll be such an interesting, like you said, document years from now, because obviously 2020 is going to go down as a really interesting moment to kind of look back on that and see, what that captured. Yeah.
Really.
Totally. So we're almost done with this. So here's a snapshot of California, just moving through the book. And then I wanted to end it on this one because one of the coolest things, in our opinion, about the Call Me Ishmael phone book is its sort of explicit invitation to become a part of the story. So the last feature throughout are these sort of interactives, and I just put them all on one quick page, but you can see there's prompts. And so every day now we're starting to get calls that answer these prompts. So people are calling us about their favorite cookbook and telling us a story about it, or stories about their wedding, literature that was read at their wedding, and all sorts of stuff. So when you you know, if you get your hands on a Call Me Ishmael phone book, you'll find these prompts and many more.
And
Yeah.
if I can interrupt, if none of these really spark an idea for you, I looked at the list of participants we have on Zoom, some of our old friends and some new friends that we don't know yet. If you're a friend of Magic City and want to call and tell us about a book that you got from there, we would love to hear from you.
That's cool. Cool. So that's it. I'm going to exit the screen share, but thanks for letting us do a little hands-on tour.
Yeah, when we're done with this call, we're going to do a post on our social media to kind of do a big push to get everybody to call in and tell some Oklahoma stories. So that'll be great.
Cool.
I want to say, you mentioned some of the stories that you provide transcripts for in the book, and some of them are pretty emotional. I'm curious, in this year, for example, if you've heard kind of an increase in the more emotional stories, or if people are saying, hey, I'm reading this to kind of help me get through this tough time, or if there have been ones that really have just kind of brought you to tears, honestly, listening to them over the years.
Yeah. So, I will say that because the project is anonymous, we've always gotten a healthy number of calls that are serious, sometimes a little bit sad, sometimes a little bit dark. Oftentimes they end up in a warmer, happier spot. But I think just because it's an anonymous project, it feels like kind of a confessional quality. And if you've read very much about other projects, Post Secret, there's another digital one that sort of like collected people's secrets. Like, I think it's just a common thing that when you have this place that feels sort of safe and distanced from you, like a voicemail box of a fictional character. Yeah, it feels like a place that you can sort of unload those things. So I don't know that I've necessarily seen a change in the percentage of like darker or heavier. We've definitely been hearing from people who are talking about the books getting them through the pandemic, especially since the book came out. I think that's been a really fun extension of the project, just that there's a group of people going through a hard time together. But yeah, it always sort of varies, and there's always surprising things in there. Like, every time I think that I understand all of the different ways people can participate in this project, somebody comes up with something new. So
yeah,
it's just the I think that the primary motivator for people to call is often to thank a book. And so sometimes that's a very profound thank you. Like, if I hadn't have found this book, I wouldn't be who I am today. If I hadn't have found this book, I would have been so lonely in college.
And thanking the author too.
Yeah. And so it leads to really profound places. Like, you could definitely call some of the calls, sad and everything, but I don't think any of them are tragic. You know what I mean? They're just, they're exercising that human condition the same way that books do.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm curious, with all the work that goes into this, just the interviews alone stuff, I'm sure were just a major time commitment. And was that actually, before I get into that, was that when you pitched the book and you were doing it, was that always part of it, or was that something you wanted to add in at the last minute? Was that conditional to the book coming out that you do that?
No, it was not. And it actually, we had been through a couple different iterations. We always knew we wanted to feature bookstores. Like, you can't talk about bookish places without talking about independent bookstores. And so we knew we were going to feature them, but we went through a couple different iterations, but we really wanted to like capture all of them. So those checklists that Logan showed you, those, after we had already sold the book and were working on the first draft, we kind of came up with this idea of like, oh, you used to like write down your favorite numbers in phone books, and like it was okay to write in them. So the checklist idea came up. But like, each bookstore is so different and unique, and we wanted a place for their stories to really come out. And so yeah, I don't quite remember how we came up with the idea, but it was definitely a late in the game thing, because we had already turned the book in to go to print, and I still had to do all of the interviews this summer. So it was I think I got the Wyoming interview like the weekend before the book came out. So
Wyoming was the holdout.
Wyoming.
If anyone was wondering.
Yeah, it's pretty far away. They probably sent it by horseback or something. Pony Express. I wonder, you mentioned the look of the book. It has such a kind of fun throwback feel, and it very, very much feels like that. So you obviously had a very strong sense of what that is. Now, usually authors don't necessarily play a huge role in the way a book looks. how did you guys end up working with like the designers and the publishers to kind of mold that kind of vision? Because obviously I think you guys had a very strong aesthetics feel for what the book was going to be.
I think like there's two answers to that story. One is we had a really fun brainstorm with a bunch of our design-minded friends. So Steph works as a digital producer in a high design space. I run the TED education program, which is animations from TED. I don't know, like
as in TED Talks, right?
Yeah. TED Talks is the talk format, but the TED Ed animations are what my team runs. And so I'm constantly in dialogue with amazing designers. So we have these really visually blessed friends who've got the gift of design. We had them all over to this room, put a big table in the middle of it. This was like 2 years ago. Dropped a bunch of phone books on the table and said,
and fed them mimosas.
And they were and just had the most fun brainstorm ever. In fact, you can see them in the thank yous at the back of the book. So that was one heavy influence on the design. And then I feel like you could probably tell, where the working with the publisher and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, when we started thinking about who we wanted to work with to make the book, Avid Reader Press hadn't even come out with their first book yet, but they were just this newer imprint at Simon & Schuster, and there was such like fun creative energy, and the things that they had worked on in the past that they were showing us were like exactly the energy that we wanted to capture for Call Me Ishmael. So it was really fun to collaborate with them, and their designers are obviously stellar. We're so happy with the way the book came out, but it was fun to be involved in that part.
Have you had much time to read while doing this project? Obviously, that's where this was all born out of. You guys are both avid readers, no pun intended, but are you finding time to still get into that, or have you just been so focused on this project and also your day jobs too?
First of all, we're okay with puns.
The pun-friendly space we're in right now.
Yeah.
No, we're big readers. We're probably reading a little, or for me, I'm reading slower than usual with all this, but have definitely been reading. We are actually we're moving apartments soon, and so we're going through the like heart-wrenching thing of like moving and packing and trying to get rid of some books.
Each book just gets help.
Yeah.
But yeah, donate or store or bring with us in our car, but no, I feel like I've been reading just about the same clip. I've just been falling asleep faster, right? Like I'm just like so tired, but my eyes can't take it. But still, we're reading, and during these challenging times has been such an amazing, probably one of the most important things we got.
So the book dropped in what, 4 weeks ago. I can't remember exactly what the date was, but have you seen a huge uptick in calls since the book dropped?
We have, yeah, and it's so fun because the prompts that Logan showed you, we would put those out like on social media in the past, or if we did partnerships with other orgs. But this is the first time we've really had like a wide net of like ideas of things to call about, and so it's been fun to see which ones are sparking interest.
Yeah,
that's interesting. And I guess every time you do any kind of media hit or anything like that, you can kind of correspond those spikes to those different things.
Yeah, one funny like trend I've noticed is whenever we share a new call, and with everything this year and this fall with the book, we haven't been sharing calls as regularly, but whenever I share a call about a certain book, it always like reminds people of what they think about that book, and so then we get a bunch of calls about it. So like anytime I share Little Women, I know we're going to get a couple of calls about Little Women. If I share Great Gatsby, we'll get some Great Gatsbys.
Yeah. You mentioned obviously a phone book is annual, and we kind of teased the idea of like the second edition or whatever, but are you already kind of thinking about where this thing kind of will keep going? Are you going to do a revised? Is this kind of like the Sibley's Guide for Birds that just gets revised every year? How do you kind of feel like this can be updated?
Well, we just launched this one. We're focused. What makes us most excited right now is not thinking that far in the future, but actually just hearing from real bibliophiles, people who really love books, and when they get their hands on this, what they think. Because you got to imagine we worked on this for like 2 years. You know, just picture like yarn and post-it notes, like, right, like this is some serious organized,
like a serial killer trying to track down a serial killer.
And you know, you don't picture not being able to go to bookstores when when you're making a book, right? Like we were going to take like sabbaticals and drive around to every bookstore. And so there was this like huge void of like, when you make an interactive book, it is so key that you want to see people interact with it. And we had no path to do that because of global health issues. And, you know, there are bigger problems, right? I'm not here whining. We're very fortunate and we're very grateful for the opportunity, but we have not seen anyone interact with the book. So we sort of just like get so stoked when someone's like, you know, shares what they think of it on Instagram or social media in any way, shape, or form, or the reviews, because it's real bibliophiles saying real things of like, oh my gosh, what a feast. I binged the Call Me Ishmael book last night, you know, stuff like that. And that might sound like shallow or promo-y, but like it's so awesome.
Yeah,
to
Hey,
see
you guys worked hard. Take the credit.
Yeah.
Give yourself a victory lap, at least for a little while.
So we are interested in it's like, I think we're really interested in like a pure kids version. I think that would be really fun.
Yeah.
And like, I think we could do it really well. And then we're also interested in like, we're like sort of like weird innovators, right? Because we revive rotary phones and answering machines and phone books, but we try to do something, a weird kind of retro tech meets modern tech thing. And we're kind of cool. Oh, look. Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
Emily
So
will get the kids version. Got
nice.
it. You get the first one.
One other thing we're really interested in, and I think this is in the spirit of your question, is just the concept of hyperlocal. So like, we've published a national book now and we're really excited about it. And of course we want to keep doing that, but how can you like, right, like independent bookstores are the beating heart of books, and libraries, of course. And so that's all of a hyperlocal experience. And so phone books are hyperlocal by definition, from a design perspective and a sort of experience perspective. And we've kind of figured it out. So like, what does that mean? We're interested in those like kind of creative questions.
Yeah.
You know?
So obviously there, you know, we're very much about the physical book, and you can buy a copy of the phone book from us. If you just go into the chat, we've posted a few links there. We'll keep doing that there, but I'm guessing there is a e-version of this book. Does it have different functionality? You talked about, obviously this is interactive, but did you do stuff differently in the digital version as far as like clickability or anything like that?
No, and it's funny that you say that, because one of the things that the book, one way that I sort of described the book to myself when we were first trying to figure it out. Do you remember those kids books that had like, they're like cardboard books and they have like the little line of buttons and you push in, it's like a picture of a cow and it moves.
Right.
Like, that's sort of what reading it on an iPad feels like to me. It's like, oh, I will hold my phone here and I'll hold this, and I'm sort of like matching the
yeah. No, it looks nice in the digital and it functions the same. You know, if you're asking, I think I do think it's more of a physical paper book, but I mean, I don't think you would regret a digital purchase, but I definitely, you know.
Yeah, we like the yellow pages.
It's funny. Like, you have
obviously there's no audio. There's not an audio book version, but the whole book is about audio.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously there's something there. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious, as we wrap up, just a couple more questions. What do you expect people, you know, other than just kind of, you know, getting more calls in and kind of having kind of just an uptick of people responding to the project, how do you kind of know what success is for a project like this? Like, what's your metric for knowing whether it's impactful on the scale you want? Or like you said at the beginning, you said, you know, we kind of just ride it. It's kind of a little bit of a quiet project. We just kind of let it organically grow. But I would imagine at some point you're talking about videos, you're talking about radio. You know, there's a business model at some point here that you're going to start kind of looking at, where this could in some ways have a brand that goes beyond the book and all these things. How do you kind of balance all of those things out?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, you know, it's certainly a funny project in that way because there's any number of ways to sort of put some metrics against things. But I think I actually bet we would have different answers for this. But for me, the absolute most successful, the best joy I can get from the book is when somebody tells me that they discovered a book that they loved throughout. Like, I just think that if you open our book, call one of these numbers, and some stranger out there who you don't know what they look like, where they're calling from, anything about where they grew up, what their lifestyle is, and you just connect to the emotion in their voice and the passion over a book, this thing that they love, and that makes you want to go get that book. Like, to me, that's like a totally new form of human interaction and connection that we've made that pays off in the biggest way. And if we get like one of those a year, then I feel like that's a good year.
Yeah. Yeah. The discovery, that's a really good one, of just like someone listening to a story and getting it, discovering a book, celebrating books. Those are definitely how we think about it.
Mhm.
How many, it is, to your point earlier, books on books is our goal, and being in service of the publishing world and readers and writers. From, you know, these phones, hopefully, right, we're out of the thick of this pandemic in the next 6 months to a year. I don't know, right? Like, I guess that's what some people think is possible. And it's really fun to think about doing more installations, art installations of those, and interactive, because now we have a book that complements them. And we just have all these really neat ways to display them, and they look really cool when they're, you know, they're already in about 100 places. It's just, is the place open, you know, at the moment?
Well, count us in for you doing something with that when it gets back to normal. I'd love to do something here at the bookstore. This is super fun. I just want to remind everybody, this is the book, the Call Me Ishmael phone book. It's an essential for all you book nerds out there. It's also a great gift. You know, I think a lot of people we know, how many people do you know, like, who are fellow readers in your family or your friends, but you don't really know what they've read recently? And if you buy them a book, there's like, well, maybe they've read that already. And if you ask them about it, they're going to know you're buying them a book. But this is something that I think is a perfect book for all the readers in your life, just to kind of get them going. You know, I think finding that next thing is always sometimes the most frustrating thing about reading. So I hope all of you guys watching will get a copy of this. You can get it through Magic City Books or wherever you are at your local bookstore. I want to say a big thank you to Steph and Logan for joining us. And I hope you guys keep going with the project, stay safe, be well. And
thank you for participating in it. Just the work you do in your community is so amazing.
Awesome.
We're excited to get out to see you when it's safe to, and do some shopping, because we really appreciate everything you guys do.
And throw us the phone number one more time. What's the phone number again?
774-325-0503.
Yeah.
It's right there on the book.
Screenshot it. Yeah.
Oh,
there you go.
all right. Thank you guys so much. Take care. Happy Thanksgiving. And
happy birthday. Your birthday's tomorrow, right?
All right, I know, our 3rd year anniversary tomorrow.
Oh, so exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. We'll remember this year forever, I'm sure. So it's going to be an unforgettable one. But to all of you watching at home, thank you for joining us. Share this with your friends and get out there, read more, stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.